Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. We are privileged to have with us current ATP coach Neville Godwin. Neville was a former top 100 singles player, reached the fourth round of Wimbledon during his playing career. Neville has had great success transitioning to the coaching world, where he coached South African player Kevin Anderson to a world top 10 ranking and a U.S. Open final appearance in 2017. Also in 2017, Neville won ATP Coach of the Year. He's currently helping coach Reilly Opelka. Please welcome to the pod, Neville Godwin. Neville, thank you very much for talking tennis with Steve and I.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. Looking forward to having some good laughs and getting some good conversation.
Well, I think Steve and I have almost everything with Reilly Opelka covered because we recently had J.Y. Aboni on. So I guess the missing piece after you is Jay Berger, right, Steve?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But we had a good conversation with JY, and we know we're going to have a good conversation with you, Neville. I guess before we kind of get started in your tennis background, how did the connection with Reilly start? We know JY had to step away, and congratulations to JY. Just had a baby, a healthy baby and everything, and he's doing great. So if you give us a quick check on that, and then we'll get into more of your background.
Sure. Well, obviously, I'm really good friends with a bunch of the agents on tour as well. So, I was with Chung Hyun from Korea the last sort of 4 years. Unfortunately, super unlucky guy, just injury after injury after injury. And Reilly's agent actually reached out to me last year, probably September, October time. And, just to find out what I was up to and to see because obviously they knew JY was going to be having a baby. And I said, well, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I spent a couple of weeks with Reilly and Jay in November in Florida, and things went really well. And yeah, so that's kind of how it all happened. And I think I'm getting a bit of a reputation as being a big guy coach.
Yeah, Kevin and Reilly, that's true. So we're going to get into your coaching career in a little bit, but if you don't mind, why don't you kind of start and give Steve and I a background in your journey starting in the sport of tennis, and then we can go into your junior career. I know 1993 was a gigantic year for you. You were the runner-up in doubles at both the French Open and Wimbledon, and then you and your partner won the U.S. Open junior doubles titles. That's 3 slams in a row that you at least made the final.
Yeah, it was. I come from a family of 3 boys. My father coached tennis. I was the youngest, which is always a privilege because you get the best of everything, always had my brothers working hard, and I had to try to keep up with them. So I was very fortunate. Tennis South Africa helped me for a significant part of my time of my junior career. And yeah, we're very lucky. We had some ATP events, only a couple in South Africa when I was young, 15, 16, 17. And I was able to get a couple of ATP points from that, which I didn't actually travel around the world playing much juniors as the guys do now. Yeah, and we were a really good doubles team. I mean, we'd had success on ATP challenges and ATP 250s already. So we were really disappointed with the Wimbledon result that year. But we got our own back at US Open. So that was great.
And college was not something that was really on your list at that point. I mean, obviously you had a ton of success. Was pro something that you were really focused on?
Yeah, I mean, at that stage, it was only really one direction. In hindsight, I wish I had gone to college. I think it would have really helped me a lot just to calm me down for maybe 2-3 years, get a little bit better physically, get a few sort of free matches, if you like. And also just give yourself options. I always describe it to people that ask me if they should go to college. I always describe it like in life, you're always better having more options rather than less, Yeah, and I mean, at that stage, I mean, I was ranked about 300 ATP already. So there was a couple of colleges that asked me, but I was kind of already going down that path. And yeah, so it took a little while because I lost some funding at the end of my sort of the 18th year, end of my junior year. So 2 really difficult years of grinding it out, playing satellites and, wherever you can. It was a great learning curve for me in later on in my year, but I think it took a lot out of me as well. I see guys now playing until they're 33, 34, 35, 36. And in the 90s, that was just not even conceivable,
I do know that. Steve knows that too. And we're going to talk about your playing career. I know Steve has some questions about your Wimbledon run, but I know you played all the slams. You got to the 4th round at Wimbledon after having to qualify, I believe.
Yeah.
Getting into the 4th round, you defeated Boris. He was the finalist in 1995. You played him the following year. I know there was a wrist injury, but got through that match. And you had a good run there. I mean, no small task defeating Boris at Wimbledon. I don't care that it wasn't a completed match because he got hurt. Still, I mean, I know Steve wants to explore that match a little bit. How nervous were you, the setup? And I'll let Steve kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, what were you thinking going into that one? I mean, it must have been, you knew that Boris was a Wimbledon institution. You knew he was one of the great grass court players. Was that scary, or was it the kind of thing where you felt like this is a really essentially an opportunity for a lifetime? Regardless of what happens, I'm going to give a good account of myself and give it my best, and I'll be able to tell my grandchildren one day that I played Boris Becker at Wimbledon.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's always a great opportunity. You know, we when we grow up playing tennis and hitting tennis balls as a kid, you dream of playing on Wimbledon center court, Wimbledon #1 court. You dream of playing the big players on the big stages, and it kind of happened out of nowhere that, you know, I'd kind of been struggling, and then I did a really good sort of training block in Vancouver before I went out there, and I played really well in qualifying. I beat the Anderpays in qualifying, final round of qualifying, which was actually a really good win at the time. Beat a good buddy of mine, Grant Stafford, second round, who I'd never beaten before. And so I was pretty confident. I mean, when you get to those sort of stages, you try not to think about winning or losing. You're just going to go out there and try to execute what you know you can do. And I also very firmly believe that when you're playing in those stages, really try your best to play within yourself. Too often you see guys getting onto the big stage and they try to play a level above where they actually can play, and they end up it becomes a one-way show very, very quickly. Wimbledon is very unique because obviously as a qualifier and just as a main draw player, you're in the #2 locker room. The seeded players obviously get into the seeded locker room. So then what was their prior custom before court 1 or center court was you'd actually get moved from your locker room into the seeded locker room sort of an hour before the match started. And so they were masters at taking you way out of your own comfort zone. So it was very exciting, all very new. And I was able to just hold my nerve and play pretty good tennis. I felt early on that there was something not right with Boris. The ball was not coming off of his racket at all. It wasn't really particularly scary the way he was playing. So I found out much later on that he actually had quite a severe head cold that week. So and then obviously when he hurt his wrist, I didn't actually see it. I just saw the ball go out and I turned around. So I honestly did not know what was going on. So it was great experience. And then, you know, obviously the first question when you get into the media room, you know, when you go from the media room where you get one person sitting and talking one-on-one to the main one where you got 40 people, and they said, well, you know, do you feel sorry for him? And my first answer was, how do you feel sorry for someone who's already won 3 Wimbledon? So so that was it. I mean, just a great experience. And I mean, if I see Boris now, we talk and we're pretty friendly. So it's great. He's a great guy.
Well, head to head, I checked the ATP website before we did the recording. Head to head, you got a 1-0 win-loss record over your career over Boris. So not many players can say that. So, your one title that you had was at Newport, and I know Steve, that's near and dear to Steve's heart. Steve was inducted to the Hall of Fame there in 2017, and Steve's been going to that event for years. So again, I'll kind of leave it to Steve, talk a little bit about that place, and Neville, if you can talk about your run when you won it there in 2001.
So yes, yeah. Before you get into that, just tell me a little bit about the run itself and the satisfaction you got in winning the title. And also, were you aware that Ivan Lendl was going into the Hall of Fame and there was a ceremony on the Saturday or Sunday, whichever it was that year? I mean, was that on your radar, or were you strictly thinking about the tournament? How aware of the ceremony were you?
Not aware at all. I did not know it. I had a little bit of experience in Newport. Obviously, I played there in '98 as well, made the final, had a couple of really good wins. So I felt really good playing there. And then had a couple, I mean, obviously grass is such a unique experience. I mean, you can play really well and lose. I think I lost the following year in '99. I lost to Jason Stoltenberg 7-6 in the third. You know, in 2001, I got there. I had a good Wimbledon. I had a really good grass court season. And the draw kind of opened up a little bit. I mean, I played a really good match in the quarterfinals. I remember that I played Mikhail Lodra. Probably played one of the best matches I ever played on tour. I beat him 6-2, 6-1 at Newport, which is a pretty good result for me. And then I also beat Kenneth Carlson in the semis, who I'd never beaten before. And then I played, Martin Lee, who I think took out James Blake, if I'm not mistaken, in the semifinals. And he was someone I knew pretty well. I practiced with him a couple times, and I just really wanted to go out and be proud of my performance in the final. And because when I played the final in '98, I really was super, super disappointed with. I was just too nervous, and so I really wanted to go out there and go out there and play to win and play aggressive and play my style and try not to think about the fact that I was in the final. And I was able to do it. Played really, really well that final.
Is that a place that you really like to go see and kind of walk around a little bit with all the history that's there? I mean, the walls bleed tennis history there, right, Steve?
Yeah, no doubt about it. But it sounds to me, Neville, like you didn't really have time for that. I don't mean that in a critical way, but you were so focused on what you were doing. Did you ever even go into the museum while you were there?
I actually did, but I think we had a draw party and we went through the museum, and I went through once prior to 2001 actually, and it's a really cool place. And I remember I did the photo shoot with the trophy was with Michael Baz, and we did that on the sort of the center court. That's not the center court, like the really old school court, which was really cool. So I got a lot of fond memories of there. I've got a ton of pictures, and I mean, I love the town. We stayed down in the harbor, and there's good restaurants, and it's just a very easy vibe. So it's really nice, especially after just coming from a Grand Slam.
And are you like a lot of these players in that you got on a kind of a, shall we say, a superstitious role with the same meal every night in Newport, or not?
Great question, Steve. I am pretty superstitious, so I would have imagined that would have been the case. I mean, if I remember right, I don't think I restrung my racket all week actually, which is kind of bizarre. if you look at how the guys are now, I mean, they're changing rackets all the time, and I also I didn't like a new grip on my racket. I like kind of like my hand molded into the grip a little bit. So yeah,
so you may have played. You think again, it's going back a little ways, but you may have played with one racket the whole time. You never break any string. Didn't
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, because it was really fast back then. I mean, it was serve, return, first volley, pass. That was kind of how it was. So you weren't going to break many strings. I mean, we weren't playing with extra heavy duty balls, and the grass was cut pretty tight. So the ball was going through pretty well. So that's my memory of it. I stand corrected if it's not exactly right, but there was definitely not very much of changing rackets.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Your transition into coaching, and I know we have mutual contacts here. I told you I'm from Chicago. University of Illinois is a couple hours from where I live, but friendly with Brad Dancer, as I know you obviously have a connection with Brad as well. That 2017 run with Kevin making the finals of the U.S. Open was so great. How did you end up with Kevin, and talk a little bit about your success in working with Kevin?
I mean, well, the obvious connection is we're both South African. Kevin reached, I was trying to get onto the tour probably from the start of 2013. I'd been in South Africa and not really enjoying coaching at a club and at an academy, which, I really felt like my niche was to be out on the tour and trying to help tour players. And I got the word kind of out on the street that I was looking to get on tour, and Kevin approached me towards the end of the year. And he said, let's give it a go. And we got off to a really great start. I mean, he went final of Del Rey, final of Acapulco, quarterfinals Indian Wells. It was going pretty easily. We got on really well, and we could speak a common language. That was just really try to simplify his game. And I think he came from a background where he tried to do like a lot of different things. And I felt like when he just kept his game really simple and very direct, that's when he had his most success.
So was his disposition different away from the arena? Having interviewed him a few times, he just strikes me as an incredibly balanced, even keel type of guy. But on the other hand, you're leading a high-strung life. It's not easy, all the pressures and playing these tournaments and reaching the finals of the Open. Tell us a little bit more about Kevin as an individual and how you sort of worked your way through these tense times with him to help him deal with the emotions.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Kevin he's learned to have a balance in his life. He he grew up in South Africa, as a very diligent, hardworking guy, always trying to not leave any stone unturned, trying to tick every single box, trying to make sure everything was looked after. And I think sometimes what happened to him is he got a little bit too in depth into that sort of process. And when, like, as I said previously, when he actually played his best, we were able to really simplify things and keep his game very simple, give him just a couple of simple cues, easy cues that he could, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Because otherwise he would, it happened a couple of times, he'd kind of get lost out on the match court. And that was, that's when he didn't really have a sort of an identity on the court.
How did you feel about his performance against Rafa in the final, and what was your sort of strategic counsel going into it?
Yeah, I mean, we knew Rafa was going to play really far back, and we wanted Kevin to try to play a little bit more short angles up the court and things like that. It was not something he was particularly comfortable with, and it's definitely not something that's easy to execute when it's a little bit out of your comfort zone when you're going into a Grand Slam final. So it's we've seen it many times where guys will lose a final, but they weren't really ever in the match. Sort of, they were kind of trying to, I don't want to say put on a good show, but they were a little bit overwhelmed by it. And that's absolutely not, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It's a massive stage. And I feel like there was a couple of things in hindsight that we could have done differently. But I mean, Rafa is, when he gets to those stages of tournaments, he's proven that he's really, really difficult to beat.
Yeah, that's well said. I guess now with your focus with Reilly, and we know Reilly's been having great results as of late. I know I spoke to JY a couple of days ago and I said I'd be talking to you, and I know you guys are in contact. I assume you're working very close with Jay as well. Is it the three, Reilly, you and Jay, Reilly, you, Jay, and JY, all of you guys obviously working for the same goal? How's that going with Reilly? And I guess talk about some of the things you're really focused on. You got Indian Wells and Miami coming up.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm actually staying at Jay's house right now. So yeah, everything is going, we get along very well. I feel like we both have a low sort of ego point. So, if we're both on the court, he's totally happy for me to lead the session, or I'm totally happy for him to lead the session. And then, JY is a incredibly smart guy. He's super good with stats and analyzing opponents. So we just try to get as much information as possible. And then obviously kind of simple. Reilly's game is pretty simple when he plays direct and when he has very simple patterns. That's when he tends to execute. He plays his best because it's a simple execution.
What about those back weeks? Just a little bit on that, Neville. That with Dallas and Delray and a win and a final, and he really seemed even better to me than he had been last summer when we saw him come into his own. What do you think led to that? Because he was at a very high level for 2 straight weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you watched his matches in Australia, he played a ton of really good matches in Australia. And I mean, the first week he played a great match against Cressy. Lost. I mean, he had, I couldn't tell you how I think he had 10 break points in the match. He 12-10 in the tiebreaker. So it was a great match. We felt pretty good about that. The following week, he played 2 really clean matches against Jordan Thompson and Nakashima. And then lost to Andy Murray, who actually played one of the best matches I've seen him play in a long, long time. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Andy played a really high level. And then in Australian Open, he had an incredible match against Kevin first round actually, and then Dominic Kopfer second round, who he actually hadn't beaten before. And then against Chapo, it was 4 sets, but very close. I mean, he played a fairly poor tiebreaker in the first set and then won the second set. So, potentially could have been up 2 sets to love. And he's just been, I think his overall consistency this year and buying into the process that we're putting together has been really high. And so his level has been pretty high. I mean, all of his matches, he's played 50, I think he's 11-4 for the year. And I mean, if you watch all of them, you could pick anyone, you're pretty much going to see the same sort of thing that you throughout.
Is there 1 or 2 things that you can share that you're comfortable sharing that you're focusing on again these next few tournaments, and you go to the clays and go from there with your current work with him?
Well, we know the numbers on Reilly's serve. I mean, he's going to hold serve between 90 and 95% of the time. So we have to try to create up more opportunities for him to break serve. And I think if you look at the numbers this year compared to last year, he's definitely creating way more opportunities to break. The numbers in terms of games won hasn't changed as much as we would have liked. But definitely, I mean, he's having break points in most of the matches he's played, which is something that has changed from last year.
No, that's great. And I want to kind of ask this question from a player versus coaching angle. You as a player, and I know the game has changed a little bit. The equipment obviously has changed, but you as a player, when you were being coached versus now you being the coach, were there things that, if you could remember, your coach emphasized when you were playing that were different than what you are emphasizing now when you are the coach with someone as Kevin or Reilly?
Yeah, I think you tend to take the things that worked for you, and then it becomes also about knowing your subject. You have to know your player, know what your player wants, what they're looking for, what sort of information they want to hear. So, for me, I really like my player to trust their tennis IQ, because I feel like you can only prepare your player for probably the first 30 to 40 minutes of the match. Once each of you have sort of put your cards on the table, then things can change. And so then you just got to make sure that they trust their IQ, and that you've given them enough confidence to be able to go out there, and they're prepared well enough to be able to go there. And if something changes, to be able to change with and be calm and go with the change and recognize the change, obviously.
Steve and I have had this talk with several of our guests, and I remember talking to Brad Gilbert about it in depth. Each player's different, and Kevin is mild-mannered. Reilly's, I would say, pretty mild-mannered as well. I mean, he's got ups and downs, his emotions, but I would claim he's pretty mild-mannered as well. Before the match, are you someone who just gives your player a ton of information and that player can absorb it all, or are you one of the quick hitters, 2 or 3 things and boom, you're gone?
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer 5 points maximum, or cues, whatever you want to call them. This is what you want to focus on out there today. Boom, 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 boom. And the only thing you need to worry about is pay attention to that particular pattern or that change of plan or something like that. But go ahead and execute your things at your level.
Because I remember Steve and I, when we were talking to Brad, when he was coaching Andre could absorb so much information, and we all know Brad can talk, right?
He can give it, yeah.
He can give it, and he would give Andre so much information he could absorb. And then when he worked with someone like Andy Roddick, his brain didn't process like that. Andy's super, super smart, but it's just a different way of thinking. Andy's like, Brad, give me a couple things and boom, leave me alone type of thing. And
right.
It's intriguing to see, like you said, kind of know your subject. It's so important.
So yeah, exactly. So expanding on what David was saying, Reilly versus Kevin in that respect, how does it differ from your standpoint? What the way you guide them, the types of things you tell them?
Well, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, obviously, because of the size, there's going to be a lot of similarities. So there's just a couple of subtleties that you might throw in there, a few intangibles. I mean, when I was with Kevin, we worked really, really hard on trying to get him. What we found with him is that the longer points went on, he tended to lose his court position, so that was something we said, well, okay, the shorter as efficiently as you can make points short, let's try to work on things that can do that. And with Reilly, he's a little bit more comfortable staying in points. I mean, he moves great. I mean,
he moves really well for his size.
I really hate the expression "move well" for a big guy, because he actually, I mean, there's not many guys on the tour that would beat him over 40 yards. He's lightning quick.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that's really one of the fundamental, no disrespect to John Isner, but is that one of the reasons why he's having this success? I know they've had some incredibly tight matches and the record-breaking tiebreaker, et cetera. But do you think that seems to be the sort of a common viewpoint among the cognoscenti in tennis, that it's his speed that separates him from John Isner?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I want to give all the credit to Jay and JY. They set out their stall a couple of years ago already, saying, well, we really want to make sure that we want to make Reilly a better tennis player. Yeah, we all know he can serve great. We all know what he can do, but we actually want him to be a good tennis player as well. And I think that's what you're seeing. He's actually playing really good tennis. Of course, he's holding serve. He's going to do that, but he's playing really good tennis, and it's crowd-pleasing tennis. Is very entertaining. And he's not, as in inverted commas, what he would describe himself as a true bot. You know what I mean? As a true serve bot.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. And I do have one final question before we want to end, but before we do that, I want to give Steve one more opportunity. If we covered everything we wanted with Neville, I know we could talk a long time. Neville, I know you're getting ready to go to Indian Wells, so we don't want to keep you too long. But Steve,
Yeah,
before I end with my final item, anything else we got?
Yeah, just wondering how now that you've reached this stage of your coaching career, is it a little less? So, is there a little less tension, or is it still sitting on pins and needles through every match? Because I know that's got to be one of the toughest parts of the job, is playing that match and getting inside your player and just dealing with the flow of the match. Has that changed across time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've matured as a coach as well, and trusting that, like, it's actually funny you asked that question, because Jay and I were just talking about that just the other day. It's like, well, we do everything you can to prepare your player, and then you kind of send them off on their way and say, off you go and perform, and it's out of your hands. So really, you've got to just trust your preparation, trust your statistics, and trust what you told the player, what information. So sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't get it right, but.
And you're pretty calm in the box, Neville, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most calm. Are you an 8 or a 9 in the box? Outwardly, we know what's going on inside. Maybe,
outwardly, I think I'm maybe about a 5 or a 6, I would guess.
And inwardly?
About 12. A 12.
12, okay.
Very funny. Well, hey, we appreciate your time, but I do want to end with one other item, and it's a mutual friend of ours. He's an amazing individual, and that's Alistair McCaw. I know you've known Alistair for over 35 years, I believe.
Yeah, even longer. Yeah,
even longer. I know you grew up with him, and I know Alistair's a good tennis player in his own right. I know you got the best of him, and I believe it was a 12 and under tournament. I did some research. I did some talking with Alistair, but by all means, what happened back then doesn't matter, right? What matters is what's going on right now.
Absolutely.
So you and Alistair McCaw, Alistair's got that beautiful one-handed backhand. You break his game down. Give me the scout. You versus Alistair, 1 set. Give me the score and the scout.
I think that's a very unkind question, Dave, because he's a good buddy of mine, and you're quite right. He does have a beautiful one-hander. Let's go on the tennis court. I think I would very comfortably take care of him, but on a golf course, and then on any other physical activity, he's got me very comfortably on the same scale.
Fair enough. But yeah, for those that don't follow Alistair, definitely he's really great with high performance coaching, and it just doesn't help high performers. It's any athlete, any coach, even parents. I mean, he runs the gamut. He's the best of the best in his field. He's got several books. Go follow him. It's the McCaw Method. He's on Facebook. He's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. Neville, any other words about Alistair? I know you're
no. I could not agree with you more. I mean, he's just a top guy, super motivational guy, very positive influence in my life. And with we work together with Kevin, we work together with Chung. And absolutely go out there, check out his books. I mean, my kids read them, and I think they're very motivational and very informative as well.
Thank you, Neville, and thank you for your time, and best of luck with Reilly moving forward.
Guys, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Neville.